Demystifying the whole complex web of production costs, it's not just a job for the accountants down the hall. It is literal survival for a business. So in today's explainer, we're going to use a real-world case study of a furniture factory to track those hidden expenses that silently eat into your profits when you're transforming raw materials into finished goods. Let's dive in. Think about this for a second, because it's a totally bizarre paradox. A factory can have orders flying out the door, they can be running at maximum capacity, and yet they still go completely bankrupt. Why does that happen? Well, because it's not just about selling. If you don't aggressively track and control the hidden, underlying expenses of your production, your own massive sales volume will literally bankrupt you. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the foundation, building the factory. So imagine we're building a conceptual furniture factory from the ground up. When you look at the finances, every single expense from purchasing that raw timber to operating the heavy machinery and paying your workforce, all of that forms your total cost of production. It's like a massive pie, and it basically splits into two main slices, direct costs and indirect costs. Mastering the delicate balance between these two is absolutely crucial. It's step 1 for any executive team. Moving on to section 2, building the product, direct, indirect, and prime costs.
Okay, let's step out of the accounting office for a minute and onto the actual factory floor to look at prime cost. This metric measures your baseline manufacturing efficiency. It's the absolute foundation of your product's price tag. You calculate it by adding up exactly what it takes to physically build the thing, so your direct materials, direct labor, and direct expenses. If this baseline number is too high, well, your chair is unprofitable before the glue even dries.
And here's where we really see the difference between those two big slices of the pie we talked about. Direct costs are highly traceable, right? It's the timber, the carpenter's wages, the specific saws they're using. But indirect costs, those are shared across the board. Think about factory supervision, the cleaning crew, or the security guards at the front gate. You can't really link the hourly rate of a night watchman to one specific wooden chair. But hey, without him, your premium timber might just walk away in the middle of the night. Next up is section 3, scaling up, fixed versus variable costs. So our furniture is a huge hit. We need to scale up. But scaling introduces a pretty massive hurdle, and that's fixed costs. These are the expenses that simply do not care how well or how poorly your business is doing. Whether we produce 10 chairs or 10,000 chairs, the factory rent remains exactly the same. Now, they are wonderfully stable for your financial planning, but they're also brutally unforgiving because they'll drain your bank accounts even if production suddenly drops to 0. Now, pay attention to how these costs actually behave when we crank production from 10 units all the way up to 10,000. Factory rent stays exactly the same. That's a pure fixed cost. But the timber and nails, they scale up proportionally. Those are variable costs tied directly to your volume. And then you have electricity, acting as a mixed semi-variable cost. Basically, there's a fixed baseline just to keep the facility powered up, but the variable portion spikes as your machines run overtime to hit that 10,000 unit mark. Which brings us to section 4, the bigger picture, overheads and operations. Obviously, there's a lot more to this than just cutting wood. We've got to keep the entire business running day to day. You'll often hear the term overheads thrown around. Factory overheads are specifically your indirect manufacturing costs. So equipment depreciation, insurance, machine repairs, things strictly meant to keep production humming. Actually, scratch that. Make sure you don't confuse those with overall operating costs. Operating costs fund the entire daily enterprise, covering administrative salaries, marketing campaigns, and even your fleet of delivery trucks. Now for section 5, strategic decisions, the cost of choices. As our operational footprint expands, management is forced to make some really tough strategic choices, and that introduces invisible costs. The most fascinating one, for sure, is opportunity cost. See, this isn't a bill you pay, it's the profit you sacrifice. For example, if we utilize our massive primary cutting machine to fulfill a huge order of chairs, we can't use it to make doors at the same time. The profit we would have earned on those doors, that is our opportunity cost. Recognizing this completely changes how you allocate your resources. And that kind of strategic thinking naturally leads us right to marginal cost. Think about the number 1 here as representing a single extra unit. Marginal cost calculates the exact financial impact of producing just one more chair. By dividing the change in total cost by the change in quantity, you find your absolute optimal production limit. It's brilliant, really. It tells you the exact moment when producing one more unit stops making you money and actually starts costing you.
Moving into the home stretch with Section 6, Staying Alive, Controlling Your Costs. Of course, none of this is happening in a vacuum, right? Out in the real world, we are facing inflation, high energy costs, labor shortages, and absolute supply chain nightmares. But by actively deploying strategies like bulk purchasing, adopting lean manufacturing, automating repetitive tasks, and committing to preventative maintenance, a factory can drastically reduce its waste. Cost control isn't just about boring budget cutting. It's your defensive shield in a really brutal market. So, bringing it all together with this final breakdown, you can really see the true matrix of our factory. Categorizing the whole shebang, from the manager's fixed salary to the variable timber and the indirect security costs, creates a completely transparent financial map. This clear classification is basically the ultimate cheat code. It allows executives to lock in accurate budgets, optimize their product pricing, and actually steer the ship with confidence. And that brings us to the ultimate stress test. If a massive global economic shock hits tomorrow and your demand drops to absolute zero, do you know exactly which of your costs will vanish and which fixed expenses will relentlessly drain your accounts? Understanding the mechanics we've explored in this explainer today is the only way to ensure the answer to that question doesn't sink your factory. So how resilient are your operations really? Think about it.